You have been selected to receive the Resident Presidential Scholarship from Utah State University. The value of this scholarship is approximately $32,000. This scholarship is available for 4 years or 8 semesters.
Quiet family. I know there was several cars that frequented there, that lived there. I'm under the impression maybe there's a couple younger children. He may have a couple younger brothers that live there, that his parents were active in the LDS community. I am very much in shock that this was so close to home. I would think that his family would be very hurt. I have a lot of sympathy for his family right now, his parents and his loved.
Accused assassin posing with a .50 caliber machine gun. The chilling photo was taken at a military recruiting event. Tyler Robinson also posed with an anti-tank missile.
Stop, whatever you're doing, because what you're about to read is not just another crime story. It's a tragedy that turned families upside down, broke a nation's heart, and left people asking how such a thing could happen. America is still stunned. The shocking assassination of Charlie Kirk, a leading conservative figure who influenced millions of young people. But what makes this story even darker, the accused shooter himself, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, a young man once seen as a model student and the pride of his family. What sealed his fate wasn't just evidence from investigators. It was his own words, a private confession, caught without him realizing, that revealed the chilling truth. This is the story of a young man who seemed to have it all: brains, ambition, and a future full of promise, but who spiraled into radicalization and violence. It is also the story of a family's heartbreak, a movement shaken, and a country divided. It was supposed to be just another event at Utah Valley University. Students had gathered for one of Charlie Kirk's well-known debates, where he would challenge people to prove him wrong. Tension was high, as always, but it was still expected to be a night of words, not violence. Kirk, just 31 years old, stood tall on stage. He was confident, answering sharp questions with his trademark fire. Cameras rolled, phones recorded, and the audience leaned in to watch. But then, in less than 3 seconds, everything changed. A single gunshot cracked through the air. The sound tore through the crowd like lightning. A bullet traveled across the campus, striking Kirk in the throat. He collapsed instantly. Panic spread like wildfire. Students screamed. Some ran. Others froze in shock. Blood stained the stage as people rushed forward. But it was already too late. In that moment, America lost one of its loudest political voices. What followed was chaos, not just on campus, but across the entire nation. News networks scrambled to cover the story. Fox News called it an act of war. CNN replayed the footage again and again. Online, hashtags like #JusticeForCharlie and #political terror trended within hours. For many, this was not just the murder of a man. It felt like an attack on an entire movement. The FBI immediately launched one of the fastest investigations in recent memory. Tips flooded in from across the country, over 11,000 in just 33 hours. Surveillance photos soon revealed a possible suspect, and that's when the story took its most heartbreaking turn. In a quiet home in suburban Utah, a father sat on his couch watching the news. When the suspect's blurry photo appeared on screen, his heart nearly stopped. The young man in the picture wasn't a stranger. It was his son, Tyler Robinson. Tyler wasn't supposed to be a killer. He had been called a golden boy. He earned top grades, scored a 34 on the ACT, and won a full scholarship to Utah State University. His parents were proud. He had trophies on the wall, hunting photos with his dad, and a future filled with promise. But all of that shattered in an instant. When his father confronted him, Tyler didn't deny it. With a chilling calmness, he said the words that crushed his family's hearts. "I killed Charlie Kirk." The Robinson family didn't try to protect him. They didn't cover it up. Instead, they turned him in. They called their youth pastor, who then contacted the U.S. Marshals. Within hours, SWAT teams surrounded their home. Neighbors watched in disbelief as the boy they once admired was dragged out in handcuffs. Expressionless, his eyes cold and detached. Inside the house, investigators uncovered evidence that left no room for doubt. A rifle, wrapped in a towel, hidden in his bedroom. bullet casings with disturbing messages scratched into them, some mocking, some political. Online messages where he bragged about his weapon and his plans, DNA evidence linking him directly to the scene. The once bright student was exposed as something far darker. Even with this mountain of evidence, Tyler said nothing. During interrogations, he sat silently, staring at the walls, refusing to show emotion or remorse. His silence was not strength, it was arrogance. But silence couldn't erase the evidence. It couldn't erase his father's testimony. It couldn't erase the lives he had shattered. Experts began analyzing his behavior. On the surface, Tyler had been intelligent, polite, and focused. But at family dinners, he had started speaking with venom about Charlie Kirk. Online, he was buried in political forums, echo chambers that fueled his anger. What emerged was a portrait of radicalization, a once bright mind consumed by hatred, cut off from reality, and convinced that violence was the answer. When Tyler finally appeared in court, the atmosphere was suffocating. Cameras flashed, reporters filled every seat. The entire nation was watching. Tyler walked in shackled, pale, and emotionless. He sat at the table, lips sealed, eyes empty. To the public, it looked like arrogance, as though he believed he was untouchable. Then prosecutors began to reveal the evidence. Thousands of pages, photographs, and messages were laid out. The rifle itself was shown to the jury, still carrying his fingerprints. The bullet casings, engraved with mocking words, drew gasps from the crowd. One casing even read, "Smile for the cameras." The cruelty of it crushed the room. Charlie Kirk's widow, Erica, broke down in tears. Seeing her husband's death mocked like a game was unbearable. The prosecution made their case clear. This was no random act. It was planned, prepared, and carried out with chilling precision. This was not just a killing, the prosecutor thundered. This was an execution, a political act of terror, designed to make him famous. Perhaps the most heartbreaking moment came when Tyler's father took the stand. His voice shook as he told the jury about the night he confronted his son. He described begging Tyler to deny it, to tell him it wasn't true. But Tyler had admitted it without hesitation. "I lost my son the moment he pulled that trigger," his father said, tears streaming down his face. "And America lost a leader. I will carry the shame until the day I die." The courtroom fell silent. Even hardened lawyers and reporters were visibly shaken. Outside the courthouse, thousands gathered. Some lit candles for Charlie Kirk. Others shouted for justice, demanding the death penalty. The nation was divided between grief and rage, but united in one belief: the tragedy had changed everything. Inside, Erica Kirk found her voice. Standing before the court, her words carried both pain and fire. "My husband was not just a man," she said. "He was a mission. He gave his life to give young people hope, and this coward stole him from us. But if you think this will silence us, you are wrong. His mission will not die. It will grow stronger." Her words spread across the nation, echoing in churches, campuses, and rallies. The conservative movement, instead of weakening, surged with renewed energy. Meanwhile, Tyler sat alone in his cell. The boy who once had everything: love, family, respect, and a bright future, now had nothing but chains and silence. He faced the death penalty, abandoned by the very world that once celebrated him. The same intellect that could have built a future was consumed by hate. The same determination that earned him scholarships became the force behind a deadly plan. His story is a warning of how quickly a bright life can turn dark, and how one choice, one moment of violence, can destroy not only one person's future, but also shake an entire nation. This case is not just about the death of Charlie Kirk or the downfall of Tyler Robinson. It is about what happens when arrogance, anger, and radical ideas go unchecked. It is about a family forced to turn in their own son, a widow who turned her grief into strength, and a nation left to face the uncomfortable truth that even the brightest young minds can be swallowed by darkness if we don't pay attention. The story of Tyler Robinson will be remembered, not just for the horror of the act, but for the lessons it leaves behind. that silence cannot erase guilt, that radicalization can happen to anyone, and that violence never builds, it only destroys. A silence that screamed. That quiet felt full of something ugly, pride and defiance. It seemed to mock the rules meant to hold someone responsible. Then the storm reached the highest levels. He stepped into the spotlight, his voice sharp and furious on national television. This young man thought he could end the life of a devoted patriot and get away with it, he said. Listen to me. We will not stop until he pays the greatest price. Our country deserves justice. Those words lit a fuse. Crowds shouted. Rallies sprang up. Conservative voices promised retribution, not through attacks, but by using influence, votes, and power. A public figure wrote on social media, his work didn't finish. It turned permanent. The movement grew louder and more visible. For the accused, the world shrank. He went from a large house full of awards to a small, concrete cell with cold metal bars. Family dinners became court hearings. A future that once looked bright narrowed to a life behind walls. Questions kept coming. Why would a young person with so much intelligence, scholarships, opportunity, destroy everything? Experts pointed to long stretches of loneliness, dangerous online spaces, and a terrible mix of anger and ideology. They described how a clever mind can be twisted by resentment. Still, none of those explanations brought anyone back. The important thing now was fairness under the law, and the wheels of justice were turning fast. This trial was never only about one defendant. It felt like a test of the country's heart. Would the nation crack under hatred? Or would it stand firm after a terrible loss? After one hearing, a woman left the courthouse with supporters carrying candles. She spoke with a voice that sounded like a promise. He may be gone, she said, but his work continues. The truth will not be buried. The man who did this cannot hide from the facts. Her words felt like prophecy. The courtroom was where details were examined, but outside the courthouse the nation was alight with emotion. A murder had cut deeply into the country's spirit. Evidence, testimony, and the drama of the trial fed a fire that would not go out. From coast to coast, people gathered with candles, signs, and flags. For many, calls for justice for Charlie were more than a chant. They became a steady cry for rightness. Young supporters, some not even old enough to vote, marched with tears and determination. Families brought children. Veterans carried banners. Faith leaders led prayers in public squares. Grief brought strangers together, drawing a crowd across generational lines. Not every action stayed peaceful. In one city, people who opposed the demonstrations used mockery and insults. Tensions rose quickly. A clash broke out. Fists flew. Windows were shattered. Police in protective gear pushed into the crowd. Videos spread online showing people pulled into water, tackled, or shoved. Screams replaced chants. The scene shocked many viewers. The country was not only grieving, it was boiling with anger. At the center of the public sorrow stood the widow. She was more than a woman in mourning. She became a public figure in the fight for accountability. Her interviews reached millions. On television, her eyes were red but steady. My husband's life cries out for justice, she said. He was taken in cold blood. I will not stop until every corner of this nation knows who he was. She reminded listeners that he believed in truth, and that truth would expose the falsehoods around his death. Her voice trembled sometimes, but the effect was enormous. Soon, social media filled with hashtags and posts repeating her sentences. Millions reshared the message. She had become the living symbol of a community's grief. Lawyers working for the government tightened their case. Federal officials announced they were considering the most severe punishment the law allows. This was not simply revenge. It was also meant to send a message. If someone believes they can attack a public figure and face no consequence, they are wrong. At a press event, a prosecutor spoke in a tone meant to warn others. You cannot murder an American leader and expect to walk free. The language on stages and at rallies hardened. The political figure who had spoken earlier returned to packed crowds wearing hats and shirts that identified the movement. They killed a great man, he thundered. But justice will be quick and final. The audience shouted back. The idea of the harshest sentence echoed into the night. The moment no longer felt like ordinary politics. It felt like a struggle over survival, identity, and safety. Inside his small cell, the accused sat very still. He would not answer questions. He offered no remorse. His silence could not protect him. It only isolated him further. As the days passed, the case against him grew heavier. Newspapers and news websites printed his name day after day. Every tear from the widow, every chant in a rally, each witness testimony seemed to press the outcome closer to certainty. Reporters dug into his history. Neighbors, teachers, classmates, and even people who once considered him a friend spoke up. Each description painted the same sad pattern: a bright, polite young person who began to change. Isolation turned into obsession. Obsession hardened into action. One former friend said, "He used to be the brightest in class, but then he spoke about politics like it decided life and death. I never guessed he would become violent, but now it fits together." Clips of that interview ran on television and online, reinforcing a tragic picture. This was not a monster born fully formed, but someone who chose a dangerous path. Inside the courtroom, the widow stepped to the witness stand. She stood only a few feet away from the man accused of killing the love of her life. Her hands trembled around the wedding ring she had kept. "This was meant to last a lifetime," she said, voice breaking between breaths. "You didn't only take my husband, you stole the family he promised our children. You silenced a man who gave hope to millions. Your quiet does not frighten me. It condemns you. Soon you will answer for what you did." Her words landed like thunder. Jurors wiped away tears. The image of a strong woman facing the person who stole her future stayed with the public. Then, the evidence that changed everything was played in court. A recording emerged, the defendant's voice admitting the deed in a private conversation with his father. "I did it. I shot him. He's gone," the audio said, plain and shocking. The courtroom gasped. The widow covered her mouth. The jury sat frozen. That confession removed doubt. Defense lawyers found no easy way to deny the recorded words. Outside, people shared the recording on social platforms. Some felt heartbreak, others burned with rage. Calls for the severe sentence rose again. After that, the final stage of the trial unfolded. Sentencing loomed like a long shadow. Prosecutors prepared to ask for the most extreme punishment offered by the law. The nation watched. The accused kept staring at the floor, a hollow figure of the boy he had once been. In an ironic twist, his silence and stubbornness that once seemed arrogant now made him small and insignificant. He had been given advantages, education, support, chances, and turned them away. That refusal to explain, to show remorse, did not make him powerful. It made his downfall inevitable. Meanwhile, the man who was killed did not disappear into memory. His name became a rallying point. Lights stayed burning in windowsills and parks. Groups organized events, speeches, and memorials. A community that had been divided found a shared purpose in grief and in a call for fairness. The story became to losses, a beloved public figure gone too soon, and a talented young person who let hatred and a rigid way of thinking destroy his potential. In the end, it was the killed man's legacy that outlasted loud threats or stubborn silence. People remembered the causes he supported, the words he used to encourage others, and the hope he inspired. While the defendant continued to refuse to speak, the memory of the life taken grew louder and richer. So think about what happened. A promising young person wasted his gifts in a single, violent act. He believed he was beyond reach. He thought staying quiet would keep him safe. He thought private boasting would stay private. Instead, his own voice, the physical evidence, and testimony from those who knew him became the case that would hold him accountable. The tragedy did not stop a movement, it strengthened it. His widow, despite her pain, stood tall and became a symbol of endurance. Supporters grew more determined. People who had never met the man who died lit candles, marched, and spoke his name. They refused to let his life be forgotten. This is the sad story of our time. A gifted young man broken by extreme thinking, a public figure taken from his family, and a nation forced to choose between hatred and hope. The shooter believed he could silence an idea with violence. Instead, he created a lasting memory. He will be remembered for wasting a rare gift, for choosing destruction, and for the stark consequences that followed. The man who died will echo in speeches, on campuses, and in meetings for years to come. The question now is simple and personal. Where were you when justice called for action? Will you turn away, scroll past, and ignore the pain of those left behind? Or will you stand up, speak out, and make sure the story is not lost? Heroes live on because people remember them. Those who commit harm face judgment in one way or another. Justice moves in many forms, through courts, through remembrance, and through the determined voices of people who will not let a life vanish into silence. The country watches as the legal process continues. The accused may try to hide behind silence, but the truth has its ways of being seen. In the end, the life taken and the life wasted will teach a hard lesson. Choices have consequences, and one moment can change many lives forever.